boys. I finished page 4. Let's go. Thanks to my patrons, I could commission 3D artists to create a couple models for me. This may seem like a small thing, but it marks a big milestone for me. Dead Gods is going to be a big project, too big for me to create alone. Step by step, as it grows, my aim is to enlist the help of talented people. The first step has officially been taken. Dan Rogan has been a long-time patron and a major presence on our private server. He was the first person to reach out when I said I was hoping to recruit. I asked him for a tree. He did not give me a tree. He gave me a tree system, something that I could use to build an entire forest. Starting off, I used that system to build the set that the next several pages will take place on. As the shipwright's rope flies over the branch, I wanted to show it disturbing some fauna. There's an endless ecology of creatures to pull from, and I'm only just getting started. But I thought it would be good to include some birds. When researching prehistoric birds, the Pelagornis stood out as a great inclusion. It's huge, it looks ferocious, but at the same time it's very recognizably avian. Have you ever come up with an idea that you think will make your life easier, but in practice it turns out to be far more challenging than you could have guessed? I think that happens to me on every page, but on this page it was the makeshift hammock. In theory, the hammock could just be a stretched piece of fabric that hides everything. You'd just see the top halves of characters, and the rest could be hand-waved. Nothing could be simpler. I should have known it's me. What's the expression? Know thyself? Why would I ever assume that I'd just hand-wave something simple? While I didn't render every detail, I still had to figure out everyone's poses, cramped together in a small space. It didn't have to be perfect, but I couldn't rest until I'd found something that was at least plausible. Thankfully, by keeping everyone on separate layers, I could try out positions and move them around in ways that made a bit more sense, and kept things clear. Now, the elephant in the room. Physics. Can you pull yourself up with a rope like this? Well, I looked into it. I watched math videos. The action itself is mechanically possible, but it requires a tremendous amount of force. Real-life examples of people pulling themselves up like this typically include a number of pulleys to distribute the forces at play. The shipwright has no pulleys. And he isn't just lifting himself, he's responsible for 2 passengers. It really should be impossible, and yet, here he is, doing it. This is all about showing rather than telling. For 5 centuries, he was known as the Shepherd King. He spent much of that time in the fields, tending to huge animals and fighting off predators. He regularly led his armies in the defense of his small kingdom. For almost 100 years, he's been working on a colossal construction site, hewing trees, planing beams, not to mention that while his armies have abandoned him, the monsters, giants, and bandits attempting to infiltrate his lands have not. He has been training in ways we can't imagine, reaching levels of strength and skill that might almost look like magic to us. I want you to be able to see that story on the page. So put those calculators away and jump in the escapism pool, you nerds. We've already been introduced to dragons in the first 2 episodes of Dead Gods. They were huge and deadly, based on a Baryonyx Walkeri and a Carnotaurus. But this episode gives me the opportunity to reveal even more about dragons. This time around, it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Over the course of telling this story, I'm sure I'll have ample opportunities to draw T-Rexes. Obviously, I'm going to want to be able to differentiate them from one another. For this first one, I pictured him being far skinnier than we're used to seeing. He hasn't been finding enough food. This guy will play a very prominent role in this episode, so I knew I wanted to have a 3D model to use as a supporting layer. I'm sure there are a ton of models you can download out there, but I wanted this one to be special. Alan Shabanovich is another longtime patron who asked to be put on my list. He did an awesome job sculpting a gaunt dragon according to my specifications. Don't miss the added significance of this. The 2 artists that I was able to commission for this story have spared you 2 whole videos of me struggling to make worse models that would have been far less useful. That would make for a kind of content, but I want to draw this story, and with their help, I was able to do that. Last week, I talked about certain dinosaurs sharing some birds' ability to vocalize, mimicking speech and other sounds. It's a useful ability, particularly for luring prey. However, this is Dead Gods. While the animal is physically capable of vocalization, it doesn't end there. In this setting, there are gods. The Nephilim, giant offspring of humans and fallen angels, inherit their father's curse. Their spirits are bound to the earth, so the death of their bodies is not an escape. However, spirits aren't meant to be bodiless. If they can't find a vulnerable human body to possess, they'll settle for an animal. With their sophisticated vocal cords, a T-Rex makes for an ideal host. The formerly disembodied spirit enjoys all the grisly benefits of inhabiting an apex predator without losing its ability to speak. And with that, page 4 is complete. This is an 8-page story, which means we're now at the halfway point. Now for the character design. The first of the 4 horsemen was Conquest, representing the gods' conquest of mankind. They rose from warlords to kings to unrivaled gods. The second horseman, War, symbolized the war the gods waged against their creator through his created image on the earth. They attacked humanity on all sides, through violence, certainly, but also through secret knowledge, mind-altering substances, enchantments, blood sacrifice. The third horseman, Famine, is the embodiment of the consequences of that war. He is creation, starved of the Creator's natural order. The mysteries revealed to mankind led to starvation, sickness, madness, mutation, and ultimately destruction. Which brings us to Death. I've redesigned these characters in the context of the antediluvian era. All of creation groans under the malice of the gods. In this apocalyptic vision, how would Death appear? Like the rapidly approaching end of the world, the deluge, the flood. Death himself is represented as a hollowed-out Nephilim corpse, a vessel emptied of its spirit. For the figure drawing, I referenced Japanese Buto dancers. He rides a decaying plesiosaur, based on the Zuiyo Maru corpse. It was named after the Japanese fishing vessel that pulled it out of the ocean. Some have speculated that what they pulled up was actually a basking shark. I don't care. A decaying plesiosaur suits my purposes here just fine. It represents death, no doubt about that, but it also hints at the destruction awaiting sea life as well. The violence of the impending cataclysm will be devastating everywhere. The empty giant wears the flood. His robes start with crashing waves at the top, the foam tinged pink with blood. The water quickly darkens and transitions to blood red, signifying the apocalyptic loss of life it will bring. In Revelation 6, it says of Death that Hades follows behind him. This is a reference to the place, not the god Hades. When the Bible mentions Hades, it's referring to death, not hell. Here, death is represented by a writhing host of worms. They are what await at the bottom of the sea, ready to devour everything that sinks into the depths. Finally, the crown that sits above his head is a meteor. For this story, I'm exploring the idea that the instigating action God used to start the flood was a meteor. It first passed through the firmament, the vast layer of water particles suspended in the upper atmosphere that led to the greenhouse and hyperbaric conditions on the surface. Once punctured, it began a cascading collapse, leading to a destructive 40-day downpour. The meteor, moments after piercing the protective layer around the Earth, struck the crust in the exact place necessary to set off a chain reaction of geological havoc, unleashing the scalding, high-pressure waters of the deep. Antediluvian death represents the cleansing horror of the biblical flood. Cataclysmic, and yet somehow merciful. And with that, we have the 4 horsemen of the antediluvian apocalypse. This was a fun exercise. My goal was to let all of my design decisions be shaped by the setting as it's been established. It led me into some interesting places, and experiments like this help me to flesh out this world, even if they never make an appearance in the story. We'll see what character my dragon patrons vote for next. Thanks for watching.